up, everybody? It's Rama Screen, and it's time for another celeb interview segment. And there's this really cute indie movie that I watched called Good Kisser, which is now available on Netflix, I believe. And I'm here to talk with one of the stars of this film, Rachel Paulson, and writer-director Wendy Jo Carlton.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Thank you for taking the time. And let me start with this question. I watched this film, very much enjoyed it. Wendy, could you talk a bit about the inspiration behind Good Kisser? I'm sorry. And Rachel, what attracted you to the project?
I would say the inspiration for Good Kisser is good kissers in my life. Not so good kissers. Falling in love, being in love, the feeling of that, the experience of that, falling for women, crushing out on women, both ones I could be with or could never be with, and just wanted to tell that story and kind of an ode to all of those experiences.
And Rachel?
Yeah. I think what drew me to the project was, when I read the script, I think I felt so attached to each girl in a different way and each woman in a different way. And I think that when I read Kate, I was like, oh my God, that's so me in certain aspects of my life. And I think, Wendy Jo's script was so good. And I think she really got, these crazy nuances of each person and made each character so different, yet so likable and so, easy to read and easy to really get into. And I remember when I started the script, I started reading it. And then at the end of it, I was like, oh my God, I just read the whole thing. And I think that makes it good. Cause usually I'm like, I'm on page 20. I have to keep going. But I think with Good Kisser, when I read it, I was like, oh, I'm at the end of the script, and it had only, I read it, I think in an hour or something like that. And so when that happened, I was like, oh, I need to do this.
Wendy, maybe we talked about this at Outfest, but for my fans at home, can you discuss the challenges of filming this on an independent budget? I'm sure, or I assume, having one location did help, right?
Correct, yeah. I wrote it to be easier to fund and produce, but also I'm interested in that emotionally awkward, situation that Good Kisser is. So to me, it was more fun to write one night, not real time, obviously, but kind of meant to feel like we're all with them in this evening as soon as they arrive to Mia's house. Here's what they're all experiencing or wanting or afraid of. So we see them from different perspectives. So kind of like it doesn't feel limiting to me at all, because what we're seeing so much more of is their humanity and their beautiful faces and their nuances of character. And I love that challenge.
Rachel, I know you touched on this a little bit earlier, but can you describe your character Kate for us? Because we know the twist that happens, kind of halfway through, that causes the rift between Kate and Jenna. But Kate is not an antagonist here, right? How would you wrap your head around the way Kate approaches love and relationship?
I think when the movie starts, Kate is a different person than when the movie ends. And I think that that's what really drew me to her so much, was that, when you start the film as a viewer and a reader, I think you do think she's an antagonist. And at first you do think she's kind of the villain of the story a little bit. And then as she discovers herself and as she, starts to find insecurities within herself and within what she's going through in this situation, I think you start to realize that she's in fact very flawed and very likable and very much, hurting, I think, somewhat in her life and flailing around and kind of just and I think in regards to love in relationships, I don't really think she gets it. And I think that she's trying desperately to get it, but I don't really think she knows what she wants. And I think she really does care for both Jenna and Mia. And she thinks that in some twisted way, it's going to work out for the best. And there's if you've seen the film, there's no way that's going to work out. That's not so I just think it's almost sad to watch. And I think, when we were first viewing this for people, I was so scared that she was going to come off as this, really kind of harsh person. And then, people were like, by the end of it, I feel really bad for her. I almost feel like she's sad, it's sad. And to me, that was, when I was reading it, it was so what I was feeling for her. And I was like, I think by the end of this, you're just kind of like, poor girl, she has no idea. what's going on, so I think that that's kind of, but I don't think she really knows anything about love or really who she is.
For both of you, can you walk us through your process of shooting some of these films, sexy, steamy scenes? What were the conversations that you had with Julia and Carrie as well before the camera started rolling?
Well, briefly, in a 12-day shoot, and the three of them all came up from LA, and we shot in Seattle, where I live. So ideally, we would have a lot more time if we lived in the same city. I would love to be sitting in the backyard of someone's yard, and more than once, and we're all shooting the shit and talking about scenes and character, and also just not talking about the movie and just talking about life. And then, have more time. We didn't have that luxury. I had separate phone conversations with each of them before they came up for the shoot, and then we did a script read-through all together with cast and crew. The three of them went out alone to get to know each other and have dinner and drink and have fun, which I think was great, because they bonded naturally with each other, and Rachel can speak better to that. In terms of the steamy scenes, but we purposely schedule that in the 12 days at the end, so that we have multiple days together, working together, and them working together before we're having the discussions about choreography and how much of clothing is removed and that kind of stuff. So that's pretty critical, to not start your first couple days shooting that, when we haven't worked together yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I keep answering this, which I really was happy about. I think that, the sex scenes in movies look so good on screen, and they look so sexy, and people are like, oh my God, it's so hot. But when you shoot them as an actor, it's the most unglamorous thing you've ever done. Like, you're literally like, can you see my armpit hair? Like, what's happening? Should I cover that? Like, what's going on? And it's kind of like, and and you're like with this person that you've been working with the whole time, and you guys have become close and you've become friends. And so, but you're just like, I mean, I remember when Julie and I were shooting our scene, we were just like, the cameras would end and we would like crack up laughing or something, so it was just, they're very unsexy to shoot, but they look very good. And I think, the biggest thing for me was how great, Wendy, Joe, and the producers and everyone was with kind of like, because I think we were nervous. This is the first sex scene I have ever done in a film or in anything ever. So I think I was very nervous about, what I was wanting to show and what I was wanting to like remove and keep on and things. And, we all had private conversations, and then we had a conversation together where, we were all kind of like, what do we all feel comfortable with? And, and they were just so accommodating and so nice about all of that stuff. And then it still turned out really sexy on screen, because at first we were like, well, what if we don't do this? And then it's going to look like we're not really having sex or whatever. And I think that it still worked really well, and it still looked really hot, and we all felt really comfortable in the moment and for the scenes. And the girls also, we are really close and are great friends, and they're super talented, and I love them as well. So I think that helped a lot with us, being able to kind of do those scenes in such a easy fashion for all of us, I think.
I'm a big believer of hey, you do you, boo. So whatever makes you happy. If my friend says that, hey, we're gonna get a third party to join in with me and my wife, I'll be like, hey, you do you, boo. For me and my girlfriend, I'll be like, I don't know, because it'll bring up questions like, am I not good enough? Like,
Yeah.
Some people say that to spice things up by bringing in another person might help with the relationship. But in the case of this film, it brings out some truth about some people. And so how do you convince a skeptic like me about the benefit of, spicing things up by adding in another person?
Wendy, Joe, you take this one.
Do you want to be convinced? Because if that's your goal, I can help convince you. If it's not your goal, I'd be like, oh, I'd say what you're saying is like, you do you. My personal life, like, the movie isn't for me about, oh, I'm a big believer in polyamory and having multiple partners. It's like, I'm not like a not believer of that. It's more like I'm more organic, go with the flow kind of person and lover person type. I think what I like about what I wanted to write about this movie is I'm probably more like Jenna than Kate or Mia, in that I would feel insecure. I'd be wondering like, oh, I mean, in this movie, they've only been together like 2 years, you know, and it's clear that Jenna is still very into and in love with Kate. But, you know, some people are more open-minded and open to not just, oh, I want to do what she wants or she's going to leave me, but it's like, you know what, if this is something you want and you're interested in, I'm going to trust you and we're going to go with the flow, you know. And so obviously there's some, you know, betrayal that goes on in the movie, but yeah, I would say you do you is a good call for case by case basis with people.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's not for me. I've done it before. I don't think it would ever work for me, because I'm too much of like a person that's like obsessed with my girlfriend and can't, like, I don't want to share. I'm not like good at that. But I know same thing. Like, I know a lot of people that are doing it and it really works. I mean, it works for them. And who am I to judge like what works for you? So I think that, you know, I would probably, like, if it was my wife and she was like, I really want to do this, then I would probably try it again. I've tried it once. And I'd probably try it again. I'm not sure how happy I'd be about it, but I would try it again. You know, if it was something she really wanted to do. And like before we got married or something, she was like, this is what I've always wanted, or, you know, whatever. So I think it's great. That's great. I think you do you is a great way to kind of be like, look, you do what you want to do, you know?
Now, here's my final question for both of you. LGBTQ storytelling over the past 30 years has moved, you know, the needle has moved in a positive direction thanks to pop culture, you know, shows like Will and Grace or Queer as Folk that made the issue mainstream. So my question to you is, as a society, are we there yet now? Have we reached the promised land, or is it still an uphill battle to pitch LGBTQ stories to studios or to find funding to make LGBTQ movies?
I think it's a bit of all of that. In my opinion, I think it's still uphill battle because it's about what people with the money think sells, and you know their focus for the most part in a Hollywood mainstream level is like, you know, about numbers and what will make what and how many tickets can we sell and that's fine, and that's that model. It's not the model I operate under, or I'd never get anything finished or made or tell the stories I really want to tell or see. So I think we've definitely come a long way. I think when you say a lot more exposure and representation because of pop culture, I think it's actual individual people, you know, that are influencing what we refer to as pop culture. It's like it's actual human beings like us and decision makers and people who decide to fund, you know, Queer as Folk or what's the word, you know, Will and Grace, and television's obviously a little bit different, but what do you think, Rachel? I mean, you see what I'm saying? It's like the actual individuals and, you know, organizations like GLAAD and, you know, people are making concerted efforts to influence and pressure people. But at the same time, when people do make money off films that cost a lot to make and they've made their money back, then, you know, that's always great for that model. But there's so many of us making work that's original and very different voices and fresh and refreshing voices and characters. And I feel like we have to kind of be under the radar and believe in ourselves and get those stories told and not wait for permission.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's, you know, mine isn't nearly as long as that, but I loved that entire answer. And I think that there's so much in there that rings true for me. It's like, you know, there are people in mainstream that are taking risks, quote unquote, on, you know, LGBT content and, you know, but it really is still to this day, them taking risks on shows and them taking risks on films that they're going to buy and things like that. And I think there's such a world of independent filmmaking and such a world of people doing it, you know, on their own that, you know, I wish that those weren't so overlooked all the time, because in certain aspects it's so overlooked and there's no, it's like, oh, it's just an indie, or like, oh, it's not gonna whatever. And I think there's so many good stories in there and so many different types of relationships and worlds inside of our community that people should really look and watch, because mainstream, you know, doesn't have that many gay characters as leads or gay, you know, I don't think there's been a gay show since the new L Word obviously, but since that was, you know, had a gay lead character, really. It's been a long time. Yeah. So, you know, I think it's just interesting that, you know, those are a little overlooked, and I wish people would watch the voices of indies a little more.
Yeah, I mean, and a quick example. So the year I met Rachel in 2016, I spent in LA, and part of what I was doing is I was finishing shooting the season 2 of my lesbian web series, Easy Abby. The first season had gotten 50 million views on YouTube between 2 different channels. So I was pitching it with the hope that it could be bought, funded, you know, and reworked as the fantasy is, and other people get that to happen. So it's like, you got to be there, and I'm pitching, and it was exciting to feel, you know, to have meetings and have agent meetings and feel like, oh, this could happen. You got to have that attitude, and you got to put yourself out there. And that's a lesbian lead character, you know, very clearly. There's no, you know, she is the lead, and it's about her friends and her coworkers and relationships and her bipolar mother. And it was mostly shot in Chicago and then ended up in LA. So like that could have been greenlit. It already was proven, you know, as 50 million views, and there was a market for it, and all talented professional actors and sound design and you know, production value. So that's a specific example. You know, a lot of things are being bought, but they're not necessarily lesbian or non-binary, or, you know, there's more gay male characters who are protagonists than the lesbian.
All right, and we shall keep striving on for a more inclusive future.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And everybody, go check out Good Kisser on Netflix. Rachel, Wendy, thank you so much for talking with me, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.